Welcome back to Live with AI Virtual CES 2022, a series of webcasts featuring exclusive interviews with industry thought leaders on the topics of ADAS and autonomy, along with virtual demonstrations of AEye's CES award-winning Foresight LiDAR, a solid-state and software-centric solution that adapts its scan patterns in real time. All of these broadcasts are appearing live across all of AEye's social media channels and will be archived at a later date on AutoVision News. Joining us now is Andrew Nelson. He is the VP of Business Development for Trucking at AEye. Andrew has spent more than 15 years leading sales and business development initiatives at LiDAR and machine vision camera companies within the robotics and automation industries. Before joining AEye, Andrew was VP of Sales and Business Development at Sense Photonics. He also served as Director of Strategic Markets at Velodyne LiDAR. He was responsible for growing LiDAR adoption among ADAS, mobility, and logistics companies. Here to talk about all of the exciting developments in trucking today is Andrew Nelson. Andrew, thank you for joining us for this CES broadcast.
No, thank you for having me, Carl.
So, Andrew, I want to dive right in because I think this is just so neat. Over the last year or two, we have seen more and more self-driving technologies in trucking. At first it was all about autonomous cars, and now we're talking big, heavy trucks and commercial vehicles. So what has inspired this? How come trucking has really come to the forefront of this discussion?
Well, I think a couple of reasons here. First off, you have and the amount of packages we order online here and the logistics and the movement of goods and services is not going down anytime soon. But also, the biggest thing is that there is a fairly mundane, large amount of hours required to drive an interstate highway. And so it allows technology and autonomy to enable and augment the driver's capability within the truck. And so on long stretches of distances on a highway, we could make the truck autonomous so it can drive itself with LiDAR day or night. And what that will allow for is the drivers to do the critical tasks of driving in an urban environment, et cetera. So the biggest thing is that there's a need for it now. It's not about the barrier of removing the driver. It's about helping the driver. And over 72% of goods in the United States is moving on the interstate highway, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So it's a very controlled environment for trucks to make an immediate impact.
Right. Absolutely. So, Andrew, as part of this CES broadcast, we have been demonstrating AEye's Foresight LiDAR. I have a pretty good understanding of how it works in an automotive context. But how does it work in a trucking context? So how does AEye's technology, how is that beneficial to making autonomous trucking a reality?
I may be impartial, but it's a lot more exciting. What it allows for is it allows us to address the various use cases needed in trucking. So for instance, because we have the ability to mount the LiDAR higher up, we can see vehicles in front of vehicles, and the truck could stop even before the car in front of it shows its brake lights. We have the ability to see cut-ins and also see the environment for cars in the shoulders, or even at 100, 200 meters away here, seeing some debris and try to understand, is that something we need to avoid, or is that a plastic bag and we shouldn't try to do some risky maneuvers? So with LiDAR, we have the ability to provide high dense resolution within the entire field of view for the truck, day or night, rain or shine.
Right. So with this, you've got these use cases, rain or shine. So what are some of the challenges with the use cases, Andrew, that you're seeing? So, you've got a heavy truck out on the road, a commercial truck, and an 18-wheeler. What are some of the challenges associated with some of those use cases, rain or shine, that you're seeing right now?
Well, the use cases are adaptive, and so you need adaptive LiDAR. So you have situations where when a truck is merging on or off the highway, it needs to be able to see things in a very high resolution, to know which lane to go in, to be able to predict which lane is going to be blocked by a car, etc. That is a completely different environment where it needs to have a sudden real-time environment, everything around it, versus it getting up to speed 60 miles per hour plus on the highway, having to be able to see its environment and see, 300, 400, 500 meters away. So, an adaptive LiDAR, a LiDAR that can do both of those items is absolutely critical. Those are two examples of it, but also, seeing road construction, bridge overheight, overpasses, et cetera, and what that height is. So it's absolutely critical. And so you can't just have one LiDAR that does one thing. You have to be adaptive so you can, based off the trucking environment, your LiDAR can perform and provide you the resolution you need when you need it.
Right. One thing I want to go back to, Andrew, because I thought it was really interesting when you said that the goal is to help the driver. The goal is to help the operator of the truck. Give us your thoughts on that. Let's go a little deeper into that conversation. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think another one of the reasons here, a lot of these trucking companies are coming up in terms of autonomous trucking is that what the driver does well is it can grab that truck once it gets off the highway and bring it where it needs to go. And what this enables drivers to maybe go a much shorter distance, but take loads to and from a highway 10, 15 times a day and be home at night versus having to drive 10, 20, 30 hours cross country.
Yes. Okay.
So it's absolutely critical to partner with humans on our path to full autonomy.
Right. Now, Andrew, we are, 2 years into a pandemic. Obviously, the supply chain shortages, that has all made the news. Have things like that impacted the trucking industry? And if so, how? What is your vantage point there?
Well, I would say that you don't have to go far to look at the items that have accelerated the shift from man to goods to man to taking the logistics supply chain and moving it and closer. And the pandemic has accelerated that in terms of the amount of people worldwide and even in the U.S. that are now ordering online that never would have thought of it because they want to have minimal contact. And so that's done nothing but accelerated that. There's been a driver shortage for some time. And what we can do is we can help with ensuring that we reduce accidents and have better safety so that drivers don't have to worry about the mundane long distances with trucking autonomy.
Right. Now, if this autonomous technology in trucking is successful, in your mind, Andrew, could that help with consumer adoption? And so what I mean is to say that, I'm just a regular person. I'm driving on the road, but I see next to me and driving around autonomous 18-wheelers that are operating safely, that are operating within their design domains, that are staying within their lane, that are, observing the speed limit. So if we're successful in trucking with these technologies, does that eventually help consumer adoption for everyday car buyers? Is there a link there, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. If you can show safely and statistically significant numbers in terms of miles driven and controlling a vehicle that can weigh up to 80,000 pounds and to be able to make decisions on the fly, especially with the significantly increased stopping distance of a semi-truck, that absolutely translates to controlling a single chassis vehicle and being able to have that, increased safety. So I think you'll see data from insurance companies over the next couple of years coming out. You will see data from accident data as well as fuel efficiency data, which all the fleets love as well, along with, allowing the driver a much more pleasurable experience to drive, as we increase the levels of autonomy on the highway.
Right. Now, when we say, trucking, obviously we think, semi trucks and 18-wheelers, but Andrew, are there other applications for AEye's technology for what we've been talking about? Because there's commercial vehicles too, there's heavy trucks, but they don't necessarily mean 18-wheelers. So what are your thoughts on that? Are there other applications within the commercial vehicle field?
Absolutely. You won't see it as much as you do as the vehicles on the highways, but in agriculture, in
Yes.
mining, and going into unsafe environments where you need to have trucks and be able to map an area, absolutely, to have unmanned vehicles. So in agriculture and mining and all different types of off-road commercial vehicle capacities, absolutely, when you can't rely on GPS, you can't rely on the strong satellite signal. LiDAR allows you to see in real-time 3D and geometric positions of any object in your environment. It does not infer based off of a camera inferring distance by counting pixels. It is a physical measurement millions of times a second, and it is, day or night, it will give you the same information.
I think this is so fascinating, Andrew. I grew up in a rural farming community in Iowa. So,
No.
we were around trucks all the time, grain trucks, especially, coming through the elevator and things like that. My father-in-law is a proprietor of a small trucking company here in Michigan. So my wife and I spend a lot of time on the weekends out helping him in the shop. This is such an interesting and emerging field, this autonomous trucking. It's so fascinating to me. And so, Andrew, as we're here at the beginning of a new year with CES, what are some of the things that you see coming down the line for the autonomous trucking industry? What kind of predictions might you have for this new year?
Well, first off, what we're already seeing is that, as mentioned before, we work with a lot of trucking customers, and maybe their initial use case or their initial interest, it could be using a LiDAR for, on-off highway ramps. It could be for long distance. And then as they develop with that LiDAR platform, as we see companies come back to us with different needs, different, design domains, different interests, we are able to provide the same platform they've already developed upon, and so you can build upon that. And so you have a LiDAR that can perform and can be configured both via software. It can be configured to perform what the customer needs. This allows for significantly reduced development costs for trucking customers, and there is very thin margins in trucking, much thinner than in passenger vehicles. And so the ability to not have to apply redevelopment costs and use one LiDAR, regardless of the mounting location or the type of vehicle, whether it's an 18-wheeler, as you said, or a smaller UPS or FedEx, truck-sized vehicle, Class 6, or even a van, as you see in urban environments, is very important and very valuable to our customers. So I see a lot more platform development and, companies being chosen that can provide flexibility. I hate to say the word future-proofing, but the ability to be developed for the future, but also provide and do what the customer wants it to do in a LiDAR today.
Oh, right. So Andrew, I gotta agree with you. It does sound a lot more exciting than automotive. Just don't tell your colleagues who I interviewed earlier. Okay, we'll just but as we near the end of our interview here, any final thoughts that you have to add? Is there anything that I may have missed, or anything else that may just be important for our CES viewers? Because, like I said, for so long the discussion was autonomous cars, and now in the last year we've seen all of the trucks in the headlines. So it's, again, very interesting development, but any final thoughts to add for our CES viewers?
Yeah, well, two things here. I think that, this is not a shocking statement, but everybody will see that from all these autonomous companies, as they learn, as they grow, as they collect hundreds of thousands and millions of miles, they are able to understand so much more and make changes to their platform to make it safer. If they purchased a LiDAR years ago, they then have to deviate from that. So as our customers learn and grow and understand more about their solution and how they can make it better, our LiDAR can adapt with them. And so what they wanted to do 2 years ago in developing a fleet versus 2 years from now, they don't know yet. They won't know until they get there, but there'll be changes to be made. And then the last thing I would say is that, right now you have to basically be flexible, and that you have to be very specific and deliberate with the sensor you want to use in a truck. There is no guessing. There is no just driving around and collecting miles like you might see in mapping vehicles for the last 15 years. Be very specific and deliberate with what you needed to do now with very defined use cases. However, you also need to be adaptive with that moving forward. And so you have to be able to leverage, one LiDAR for multiple use cases, because you simply, these trucks don't have all the money in the world, and they have to be able to run 1 million miles and be robust, and it's a completely different animal. And so the adaptive architecture allows for that AEye brings to the table.
I love this conversation, Andrew. I would be excited to have this conversation a year from now, so CES 2023, and just to see how things have changed. So fascinating, the work that you do with AEye. I just want to thank you for your time today, being part of this webcast for CES.
No, thank you again for having me.
So we've talked about trucking with Andrew Nelson, but What about rail? What about rail and logistics? Well, we'll dive deeper in just a little bit on our Live with AI virtual CES 2022 webcast.